Dr. Blake has generously offered to answer any questions anyone might have. Is there anything, comments, thoughts folks have? I mean, that was, right? We're serving lunch later, but man, the appetizer was just like amazing. I don't know if there's any room left, but does anybody have any questions? Anything you want to ask Dr. Blake? Back here.
Hi. Hi. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank you for using storytelling in addressing us. Because I'm someone who I need the story to really take it in, or I'll be over here. So I just appreciate your stories.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. In fact, I forgot to mention. I talked to you about my mother and my father. And I was asked about 2 books that I should recommend, and I couldn't think of any other book than 2 books that my mother wrote. Her name is Dr. Bessie Blake. She's the former dean of College of New Rochelle, and she wrote this book. It's out right now. Love Lifted Me from Sharecropping to Harvard. Love lifted me, and again, for me, I wouldn't be standing here for not her and my father. And she also wrote a book about my father called God's Bad Boy. So the story that I told you, there he is. It's a handsome man right there. The story I told you about him and what he went through, but the transformational power of the counselor that he met that set our family's life on a different course is in this book. So I think it would be really good for those of us who work in that space to hear his story, because he ultimately became a counselor and then a professor and then a civil rights leader. So those 2 books. Thank you for that comment. Are there any others? Yes.
Thinking about that story that you shared about the student that you wanted to have nothing to do with you, the way you were introduced. Was there any sort of anything to that? Were you able to make a connection with him, or?
Unfortunately, no. Because once I was presented to him in that manner, for him, I mean, and it's different, Today, certain students, they are more open to therapy than we were in the past, and they actually buy into it and talk and use that language. I think the rules of engagement, I just want to be clear, there's no cookie cutter approach to any of this. I think it's really taking time to understand the individual and then engaging them based upon your understanding. But I think you can't go wrong if you build the relationship first. And so for him, because that was a misstep, he just didn't want to deal with it. And I mean, I found out later, not through him, but through others who had worked with him, that his family had been through a lot, and social workers and the likes were involved. So he was actually being protective of his family when he took that posture with me. Yes.
I wanted to say thank you very much for your spoken word and the motivation and just the reassurance for going into this school year with me understanding that this is my purpose and I am needed in the schools because I wasn't there. It's been rough these last 2 years. But my question to you would be, what is the advice you can offer to us to instill and to enlighten the administrators and the stakeholders in the schools that are not there and they don't understand how powerful and needed we are as well as them? Coming from that aspect of the children are the future and we have to support our families because it's a roadblock. I can have the energy and show up and be present every day, but what I'm walking into is different. So I've been in a place where I've tried to bring community together, but it's a fight to bring it together with everybody that we work with because they're not there. So I would love to know, what can you offer so it's not draining me from that aspect.
Well, first thing I want to offer is a couple of things. First of all, let me say this to you. What you said, that question that you asked, is such an important question, right? I think that one of the reasons why counselors are often devalued is because we ourselves have not done enough of a job of letting people understand what it is that we do. Yes, most people, you're a counselor, what does that mean? So how do we get people to understand what it is that we do? I don't think we get them to understand that by telling them. We get them to understand it by showing them. So my suggestion is, one, you know, it was mentioned that I'm president of an organization called Black Influencers United, right? And we say BU for short. We say BU for short because in that we're saying, be you. Be your own authentic self. Show up as a light to everyone in that school, right? And reach for the humanity in others. See, in schools are more political than any place I know. The administration don't understand us, you know. Teachers getting on my nerves. I'm going to the union. I'm filing the grievance. Everybody's in their box, right? And what we forgot was, the humanity. So what I say is, even for that teacher, and we all know him or her, even for that principal, we know him or her. Reach for the humanity, even when they get on your nerves. You know that empathy that we have for children that makes us tolerate their mess because we understand who they are? That empathy needs to be extended to the adults. And by your example, by doing what you do and then talking about doing what you do, you begin to change minds and hearts. And lastly, the most important part is you must seek your own community, because that's where you will recharge. That's where you will, when you say it's taking a lot out of me, you need to be able to recharge with other like-minded people, organizations like Counselors in Schools, organizations like Black Influencers United. Find an organization that identifies with your core values and hold on to it, because that's going to help you refuel when you're weak. I think that's it. Do we have? Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, I found this, I'm just starting with counseling in school, but I've been technically working in this field my entire life. I found that a lot of times staff confuse love, care, and pity. Do you have some important tips? And I'm struggling even talking about it because, sorry.
No problem.
I've seen too many children hurt because of it. And I've been there to pick them up, help with that. But the pity, everybody says they love and they care for the children, but they have pity on them. And the pity is what, like you said, children know that. They know you have pity. They know you really don't care. You just feel bad for them. So do you have tips that can help all of us separate the pity and learn to truly care and truly love? Do you have any tips on that? I know how I deal with it, but I wanted to know what tips you have.
Well, I think that's a great question. I definitely understand it too. That's why I was talking about, and I used the example of the underestimated one. Because I think the pity comes from the words. The pity comes from these pejoratives that we put on children. When we say at risk, it puts us in a mindset of pittiness. When we say underserved, and we don't talk about the things within our community that are strong. This brother right here, George Patterson, I give an example, and this may be something that you could share with your administrators. When he was a principal of a school, 308 in Brooklyn, he took his entire, his opening faculty meeting was not in the building. He took his staff on a faculty walk. and he showed the staff all the wonderful things that were happening in the community. We stopped by church. I was with you. We stopped by community garden. We stopped by businesses within the community. And all along the way were members and representatives of those different institutions that talked about the work that they did. Sometimes we have to break out of the four walls of the school because we're in a controlled environment. And it's easy to have pity when you don't have knowledge. It's easy to think that, it's to develop low expectations. Say, I'm just going to give this kid a passing grade because, I have pity. Instead of holding them accountable. That's why I said love is not weak, but holding them accountable to a standard, because that's love. It is not the teacher that sits there and requires nothing of the student that cares. It is the one that is on them, impressing them, and holding them to an accountability that's saying, you have the ability to do it. That's love. And so what I would suggest is that you go back and help redefine the language that's being used and then create the activities around it. And share, say, hey, what do we do? What do we know about this community that this school sits in? Some people travel in, travel out. They don't even buy coffee at the local store. So what do you know about this community? In BU, we ask a deeper question. What is your knowledge of Black history? You teaching Black kids? What's your knowledge of Black history? Where have you gone in the world that was a Black country and you didn't go there as a tourist, but you went as a researcher? So that's what makes people, feeling a little bit uncomfortable. You ain't feeling pity now, you feeling shame. Uh-oh. But that's the reality. So that's what I would suggest, is to encourage the staff to get to know the students, but also get to know the communities that these students come from. Thank you for that question. And I felt it. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say thank you for your motivation, for your inspiration, and for your authenticity, and thank you for always being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Love you too, sister. That's my sister right there, by the way. Dr. English. George Patterson.
Relationships, right? And how much they matter. And you spoke about support. And, support, and counselors are often, they're not the majority in the school. Hey, the school may have one counselor that serves so many kids. So it's important that counselors are supported and join organizations. Can you speak about not just the Black Studies curriculum, but how relationships led to the Black Studies curriculum? Because I'm not sure if they know that this mandated curriculum is coming.
Okay. So here's another story, and I'm gonna be quick because let me tell you, I'm gonna be quick because I know one thing for sure. You cannot stand between lunch too long before you start to wear out your welcome. So let me just say this. So Black Influencers United, remember that name. BU, remember that name. It is an organization that came together with myself, George Patterson, the chancellor of New York City Department of Education, New York City Public Schools, David Banks, and a gentleman by the name of Dr. Bernard Gassaway. And it was similar to almost some of the things that were discussed today. We were upset. We had gotten together. We said, every time they talk about Black children, they never talk to Black educators. Like, what's up with that? How is it that we have the same shared experience? We have the same, we come from the same communities, same culture, experience the same trauma, but every time they talk about the achievement gap or overrepresentation of Black boys in special ed, you don't hear from a collective group of Black educators saying that this is what we feel are the solutions to the problem. Then we had to do a gut check. So, well, wait a minute. Have we created such an organization? And then wait a minute. What are we doing to make sure that our voices are heard? And so we came up with this organization called BU. And our vision is that we serve Black educators, we influence others, and we impact Black children. And we came up with, 7-point actual item agenda. One of them being we wanted a comprehensive Black studies curriculum in New York City, because we feel like if the students knew more about who they are, then they will hold themselves in higher regard. And if others knew how we have contributed to the development of America, then the future policymakers and police officers and lawyers and politicians will also hold us in a higher regard. So that Black studies is not just good for Black children, it's good for all children. And so we, and I'll just say this, it's a shame that I had to go to the movies to find out that Black women or Black women put man on the moon. Why wasn't that in the curriculum? Why is that hidden and not open? And so this is what we set out to do. And we organized, you talk about relationships with the Black, Latino, Asian caucus of the city council. We worked with other groups. ABNY was one of them, which is Association of Black Educators of New York, and Eagle Academy Foundation. And we had allies like United Way that worked with us, right? Because we knew that we were going to have to include everybody in this process. And as a result, we got earmarked for the first year and now refunded for the second year, $10 million a year for the full implementation of Black Studies curriculum in New York City coming 2023. And we're so proud of that. And so that's why relationships matter, and that's why working together as a collective group and working with people who share your core values, when you do that, you can make things happen. I'm going to stop because I know it's lunchtime. All right? Thank you so much.